Welcome to Pandora's box
and the wisdom of the seventh moon.
Welcome again to Pandora's box. I'm your host, as always, this time of the week, Mr. Calum Waite. Where is my name, in fact? Obadiah Pennywhistle. With me, as usual, this evening in the studio we have Mr. Nathaniel Warren, host of the Rap Radar that is on Sunday nights on Aspen Waite Radio from 8 until 10 p.m. How you doing, man?
Good.
Do you want to give yourself another alias this afternoon?
Coy.
Coy!
Oh,
Coy.
He's a little coy, is he? He's a little coy.
A little bit fishy.
A little bit coy carb.
And Mr. Drusif Armstrong.
Hello.
One half of the Dark Dell as Mr. Captain Longbottom.
What's up, Captain Longbottom?
Man with the longest bottom that there ever was.
Or ever will be.
Also tech extraordinaire.
All around you.
Yeah. Tech extraordinaire at Aspen Waite Radio. How you doing, man?
Yeah, good, man. Good,
Yeah?
good.
Ready
Yeah,
to have some
feeling
good chats today?
Yeah, ready for some
Ready to
chats.
shoot the breeze. Do you want to give yourself an alias?
Yeah, today I'm going to be Thrill.
Thrill.
Ooh.
So we've got Thrill and Coy. Thrill and Coy. I'm just glad my little monkey brain will have an easy time remembering that.
Yeah, just thought single syllables today.
Yeah. So, anything new you guys going on? You played a good gig last night, actually, didn't you?
Yeah.
Where was that to? Tell us about it.
In Exeter Cavern,
Yeah.
and it was an awesome gig.
So is Cavern just the name of the pub?
Yeah. The venue is it's just called the Exeter Cavern. Like,
Is it like a
kinda
pub or is it?
It's like an underground venue.
Ooh.
So you kind of go down some steps and then it's like that, almost like an underground bar. You can imagine really cool. But yeah, massive turnout for like a weekday. I think because there's at university there and stuff. There's a load of young people and just like awesome. Everyone was just moshing and having a real good time. So yeah, it was super fun. But the day before, on a photo shoot with our friend Joshua, I Zeus the Gold. I sliced my finger, which is my actual guitar picking finger. So that was pretty savage. So I had to play with my middle finger.
Yeah, that's pretty hardcore though, isn't it?
Yeah, it was all good, and I'm really glad I did now because the gig was awesome. I was gonna be like, nah, I can't do it because I need to rest it up and stuff.
You can't do that. You can't do that. That's like one of those cool hardcore metal stories, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. So it's just like
ripped your finger open, just playing anyway.
Yeah.
It's like that. Have you seen that? I expect you have drew that image of Zach Wild playing. He's cut his finger open, or he's cut his hand open,
bleeding down his guitar and stuff.
And there's so much blood all over his Les Paul.
You should have done that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when he told me about it. I was like, man, you just fucking mental.
I wanted to be a little bit careful because we got a gig on Friday coming up as well.
You didn't want to do too much damage.
We'll do it on that one then.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
And then I got a gig on Saturday as well in Bideford. So Bideford Palladium. So
where all the biddies come from.
All the biddies.
Yeah.
All the little biddies.
Yeah.
So had to play it a bit safe, but it was all good. I mean, if I actually got my finger chopped off, at least now I know that I could use my middle finger to pick. So, that question you asked the other day, man, about which finger would you get chopped off? Maybe
for free.
Yeah, just for the lols.
Just for self-improvement.
Just for the pure lols. Yeah, so for anybody out there listening, Pandora's Box, if you're just listening for the first time, is like a topical sort of factual show. We just keep it pretty casual, really. We just talk about whatever comes into our mind at the time. This is also a podcast on YouTube. So if you'd rather,
see our beautiful faces,
see us as well as hear us, baby, then go over to the tubes, check us out, type in Pandora's Box, and subscribe to the channel if you want to chill out with us every week and just hear us talking about a plethora of interesting subjects. Sometimes, we're more serious subjects. Other times we're just talking about really wacky stuff, to be honest. I was thinking, actually, I find it really funny how, in terms of what I look up and what I read at home, it does tend to be more stuff that is grounded and actually based more in scientific fact and stuff like that, and history and stuff like that. But I almost when we're having a chat like this, it's actually really fun to go full off the deep end and
just explore whatever.
Almost just indulge that childish part of my brain that just wants to talk about Bigfoot and aliens and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's funny. I didn't necessarily think I would be like that, but I'm enjoying being like that. Talking of aliens, I hear you've got a cool story for us about a little alien.
I do.
Yeah, I think last week
about a little alien.
Yeah, last week we talked about Neuralink and Meta and stuff, but we ended up having a bit more of a chat in general about sort of philosophizing about all these different things and the wider ramifications about stuff and
the end of the world.
Yeah, I think it just sort of
upcoming world war.
Yeah, potential.
That was cool.
And it just like inspired us to like speak about a bit more like crazy stuff really today. We have actually spoken a little bit about aliens before, haven't we? We did like a little Pandora's box like a while back.
Yeah, we were saying about like the Bob Lazar thing and everything, weren't we?
Yeah,
that was so cool.
But I think this is a sort of subject where it's cool to revisit every now and again.
Well, the universe is pretty broad.
Exactly.
Pretty far.
How much alien conversation can you have in 2 hours?
Well, from what you said, you guys don't know about this story. So.
Yeah, exactly. So man, so I'm going to put my story pants on.
Yeah.
And then let's hear about this story.
Cap on.
Yeah.
Tinfoil hat.
Yeah. I'll get my David Icke shell suit out. Nathaniel's got his on. I mean koi.
So, the Zimbabwe school alien encounter. In 1994, 60 children in a school in Zimbabwe claimed to have seen an alien UFO land meters beyond their school field. Alongside the UFO was a figure with a big head and even bigger eyes.
Whoa. What? And eyes that were even bigger than his head? That somehow seems a bit strange.
What? Sounds like one of those Zeta Reticuli ones with the big black eyes.
True, with his like in-depth alien term. Sorry, Nathaniel. Before we go on, I was just saying before you turned up today, man.
Yeah.
I was just saying how like you're like real funny in terms of like you either seem to be like an expert on stuff or like not really know much about stuff at all. So it's like if you want to talk to you about like guitars, aliens or Bitcoin, you are like a freaking
or loop pedals.
Yeah, you are. Then like he is your man. He is a genius. You know. Just But
as my dad says, I've got no common sense.
So anyway, let's get back to Zimbabwe.
Yeah, getting back on our alien story. So every member of the school children also claim that they remember thinking one thing when they saw this encounter. The thing they thought was about technology and how it needed to be stopped and would eventually be the end of humanity.
Whoa.
Well, that's a bit of a random thing for all the kids just to start thinking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? That's a bit of a random, like, thought concept just to be like, everyone's thinking that at the same.
Such a unanimous
crazy
result.
It sounds like the alien was sending out some kind of, like, message, like, through the mind.
Some psychic message to the little children.
Yeah.
I've got a short video here as well, which will just play, like, a little bit of the interviews from the children and everything.
Let's hear it, buddy.
I'll put that one on now.
Dozens of children said that one or more of the disc-shaped objects landed just beyond the far edge of their playground. The next thing they knew, something was standing next to it.
I saw him standing by the silver thing, and he had big eyes.
He had a big head and big black eyes and was dressed in a black bodysuit.
They were trying to communicate, trying to tell us something. It was something to do with the environment.
I kept getting these thoughts and ideas in my mind of technology. Technology is not helping, technology is bad.
I believe that the children did see something.
I believed them because normally children don't lie.
And if you saw him again, what would you do?
I'll ask him what is he doing on Earth and what does he want with us.
Ominous.
That is cool, man. That is well cool. Yeah, I think it's like interesting. I couldn't help but like lol a little bit that like the guy that's like the futuristic guy that comes down in the spaceships, like technology's bad guys. But then again, also like to be fair, like that's just in like a jokey way. Say like theoretically that like if you did want to go like some crazy theory like it was like an alien from the future that had like come back to like warn us because we were like destroying Earth, like in a way that could never be recovered. Then obviously they would need to use that technology to warn us, I guess, if that's what they felt was like necessary. You know. So some weird little like beeps going on, but we're just gonna roll with it. Maybe it's like a little message.
Yeah, maybe a little
Morse code. It's Morse code.
Morse code aliens. They're contacting us.
Yes, that's correct. What you're saying.
Yeah.
Technology is bad.
Yeah. So like, did they like say like what happened afterwards? Because obviously they said like they came down and they did this. So what did they just like then like chill and have a ham sandwich, or did they just like?
I guess they just disappeared in a flash. So basically, I saw this all from a guy called James Fox.
Yeah.
He was on like a bunch of different podcasts talking about it, and he's been investigating the case for years.
Right.
And he released a documentary on it called The Phenomenon. And he said like the case literally blows his mind, because when speaking to the children, like there's 2 different clips there, obviously. When like, a week after it happened, someone went over and interviewed them, and then 20 years later, like James Fox went and interviewed them, and they still all recall the same story. Yeah, they seem to still like be scarred by it and everything, which I thought was pretty crazy, especially when he said that comparing the children to like an actor or anything like that.
Yeah.
Comparing them to an actor, like acting couldn't be that authentic.
Yeah.
That was his exact words, which I thought was pretty crazy. But yeah, people around the town like claim seeing it as well.
Well, like a spaceship like coming down and stuff.
Yeah, just like beams of light and stuff.
I think that's the only compelling thing about something like that, is the fact that it's like so many like kids
witnesses,
and so many witnesses, so many kids that are kind of thinking the same thing, or like
like obviously if it's just one, then you're like whatever.
But that is some weird experiences like that. I absolutely love as well. On Amazon Prime, there's a Stephen Greer documentary about aliens, it blew my mind. Like literally, like when you watch something, you're just like, wow, you know.
Yeah.
It's cool. I think it's called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind.
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would totally recommend it for people to watch. Yeah.
I could be wrong. Is this the one where someone like breaks their jaw screaming?
No. No. There's a film. There's a
something
film
to do with like an owl. That's what.
Yeah. So that's a film called Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind.
Okay.
So that's like a Hollywood movie that's not real, but it's like they make it out real, like a bit like like Blair Witch Project, and they make it as real.
I tell you a really good movie that's a bit like the Blair Witch Project. That's like an alien movie. It's called I think it's either called The McPherson Story or like the McPherson Tapes. And I remember when I watched that actually like freaked me out quite a bit. It's almost like this like home video footage of like something of it. Like imagine if you just lived in like a ranch in like the middle of America somewhere, and then it's like weird stuff starts happening, and then by the end it's like they're having like their like house is essentially like under almost like under attack is probably the wrong word, because it's not like they're obviously like firing at the house, but do you know what I mean? It's like it's creepy, man, and it's like in the camera, like in the corner before the people in the house, you realize you like see like weird little stuff happening in the corner, and it's just creepy.
Yeah.
Just because I think everyone knows what it's like to be at like your house late at night, and then imagining hearing like weird noises, or like you see something weird outside, and you just know something's off, and then it's almost like that threat of like home invasion.
Yeah.
Like regardless of what it is, it's quite sinister, isn't it?
Yeah, like Hollywood movies and stuff. When you look at the alien thing, like they always kind of, or nearly always kind of portray it as a threat from the outside that will come down and like kind of that they mean us harm and things like that.
Not an E.T.
Like an E.T. Yeah, that's like what kind of Hollywood.
No. I said not an E.T. E.T.'s sound, isn't it? E.T.'s sound, isn't it?
E.T. Yeah, the film. Yeah, the little E.T. Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah, not an E.T. Yeah.
Even in that film though, the government wanted to kill him.
Yeah,
that's more like sinister on our side, not on ET's.
That's it. There's always that thing of like war and violence and stuff like that. But what blew my mind about Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, it was like all of this evidence that this guy called Stephen Greer, who's like one of the top like researchers in like alien phenomena. He's done loads of presentations like at the White House and stuff in front of government officials, like about cover-ups and about people that have come out and actually like whistleblowers that are inside the government that actually talk about ET projects and all of that kind of stuff. So he has like unbelievable amount of evidence about all of these things that are happening. But his thought about it is like they're not a threat at all. Any kind of communication that he's kind of had with these ETs has always been like kind of like non-threatening and helping. And they would actually do these group things where they'd go up into the canyon. And Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind is basically saying like you contact them. That's like, you know, Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind is like when you know I can't remember what they are.
The third kind I think is like seeing like what you explained with the Zimbabwe story. I'm pretty much sure that's a Close Encounter of the Third Kind.
Yeah,
it's like when you like see a ship or see an alien.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And then Fifth Kind is where we actually contact them and then have communication. And there's that whole thing with like the you know, like the psychic thing and stuff like that. Like it's crazy. They've got a lot of footage in this documentary of like them out and then kind of like seeing these flashing lights in the sky where they're all kind of sitting like in a big like circle and like all like collectively meditate on trying to contact these like ETs and stuff.
Right.
And then things will happen in the sky like where they are and
it shows that in the footage.
Oh yeah, totally.
The thing that makes me like think about that is like, why isn't that more famous?
Yeah, totally, man. But it's apparently one of the most watched documentaries on.
Right. It's
on
weird that you
Amazon
don't really
Prime
ever hear anything about it. Like, unless you told me about it, I wouldn't have even known it was on Amazon.
But like media and the government and things like that, like what he talks about in this is about them trying to spin this kind of story about it. It's not true. It doesn't happen. One of the things, not going to get the coverage.
Yeah, because I saw the Joe Rogan podcast. This was it was a really old Joe Rogan Experience podcast with Stephen Greer on, and Stephen Greer has had a fallout with Joe Rogan. Stephen Greer doesn't like Joe Rogan anymore.
Right. Oh wow!
Because for some reason, I think it was when Joe Rogan did the Spotify deal. For some reason, Stephen Greer's Joe Rogan podcast was taken out.
Oh.
And like Stephen Greer like released like some footage like online. I don't know where, but you can see it on YouTube, and he's like basically saying like, shame on you, Joe Rogan, for like agreeing for like my episode to be taken out.
Whoa.
But then I've seen also on other Joe Rogan podcasts like Joe Rogan's like chatting to other experts on like space and stuff like that, and he's asked them their opinion on Stephen Greer, and like a lot of people just say that he's like crazy.
Right.
So like, I'm just like laying out. I'm not. I haven't got I haven't got like my finger in any pies, so to speak. I just think it's want to have like a most like well-rounded. I think it's discussion as possible. And I think it's like interesting to talk about like like a lot of people say that he's like crazy or like a hoaxer, and like I can't remember what it seemed like Joe Rogan's view was, but I could tell almost like Joe Rogan's view was that like he was definitely an interesting character.
Right.
But Stephen Greer's like openly just came out and said that basically like, I don't like you anymore, Joe Rogan. Like the fact that you've agreed for this to be taken down, like you're supposed to be like one of those few people that's like out
leaving
there.
Free thought and things like that.
And like, why would you agree to? I don't know why. I mean, it'd be interesting to know. I mean, just sort of like brainstorming. I don't know if Joe was like, maybe they didn't tell Joe, or maybe Joe was just like, oh, it's like that podcast is like 8 years old, like I'm just not really that bothered about it, or like why. It was very interesting to actually know, like if you could ask Joe Rogan like why was the Stephen Greer episode taken down.
For me it'd be like the first thing that comes to my head is like Netflix wanted it not to be on there. You know what I mean? And it would have like hinged the
deal.
You
mean Spotify?
Sorry, Spotify. Yeah. Would have not wanted it on there, and then kind of said like.
I'll tell you what. While we're going to play our songs in a minute, so while we're listening to the next song, I'll quickly try and like Google like a bit more about it. Maybe we could even play the little clip from Stephen Greer on air, like talking about how he's like angry about the clip being taken off. But I do think it's very interesting. So anyway, we're going to listen to a track now. When we come back, we're going to carry on the conversation. Hope everyone out there is having an awesome evening. This is one of Gojira's songs off their brand new album. Well, pretty much brand new album, Fortitude, that came out this year. This is Hold On. That was Hold On by Gojira. You're listening to Aspen Waite Radio. You're also listening to Pandora's Box with me, your host, Obadiah Pennywhistle. To the left of me, we have Koi.
Hello.
And Thrill to my right.
Take you on a thrill.
Take you on a thrill ride. We're thanks for joining us this evening. We're talking currently about aliens. Which is like quite like a funny topic when you just talking about it off the cuff like that. But it's actually a really fascinating one.
I love aliens.
Yeah, and like I think on this show, like sometimes we talk about some pretty crazy stuff. But I think it's important to like mention, like I don't have my finger in any pies. Like, I'm not an alien, and I'm also not a government cover-up guy.
Might be a lizard.
Maybe I'm trying to throw you off.
Maybe we are the aliens.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, but the point is I'm trying to make is like I don't everything we talk about, regarding like we spoke a little bit about like Bigfoot before, we talked about aliens today. Like I don't necessarily like believe it, and I don't necessarily like not believe it either. I just think a lot of these things are really interesting, and they're like worth talking about. Like, let's face it.
I strongly believe it.
I think it's crazy to think that in space there's no aliens.
Yeah, I agree. I think because it's like, and also,
no way.
I also think there's a big difference between aliens being real and like us being visited by spaceships, because like I mean, bacteria is a life form. So as long as there's like, I mean, haven't they come out recently? Well, like a year or two ago, and say they found like bacteria on Mars.
Was that there was like evidence for water?
Yeah. But I think they might have even found like some bacteria. I don't know if it was Mars, but anyway, I'm pretty sure they've actually found like some sort of bacteria on a planet. So in that
universe is teeming with
so
life.
even that, so there is technically an alien life form in our galaxy. And as I think I can't remember if we spoke about it on air or not, Nathaniel, or sorry, Coy. I think we spoke about it off air actually, and I don't think you were around at the time, but think about how infinite time is, right? So the universe has been around for like countless billions of years. Like an entire civilization like ours could have risen and fallen before the dinosaurs even evolved.
Multiple.
Multiple. Like there could have been some civilization like us that lived, 1,000 light years away, and the planet just came to the end of its life cycle or something, or there was some massive cosmic event in their galaxy and the planet got destroyed for one reason or another, and we would just never even know about it.
I almost think like us being on Earth and like of evolving into the level we have, it's almost like living proof of that concept. Do you know what I mean? That life can form and become intelligent, become conscious, like on a planet, because we've done that. We're just in space. We're just in another part of space from every other part of space that's out there in the universe. You know what I mean? So it's infinitely vast. Well, so there's probably like
they've identified multiple planets that are like identical to Earth, but just so far away that we're not.
Yeah,
we wouldn't currently be able to reach it within like multiple lifetimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It's quite cool to think that maybe though one day with people like Elon Musk out there, and that maybe there would be some sort of spaceship that could actually reach it in like in like a relatively reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, he seems to have good intentions, Mr. Musk.
Yeah, I have to say, like after we were speaking last week, I watched the latest
podcast with Joe Rogan and Elon
with Elon Musk on, and I thought it was really cool. Actually, he was talking about like the colonizing Mars.
Yeah,
and he was saying like. It definitely wouldn't be a walk in the park. He was saying if like people are looking at it of like this like free ticket off Earth and it's going to be this like this new utopia. He was like, it won't be like that. It'll be like hard grafting. Yeah. He said that like it'll essentially be like quite a dull and boring place for a long time if we try and colonize
I find it a little bit ridiculous when you think of like what the actual atmosphere and like and the land is like on Mars compared to like what we have on Earth. We're like kind of living in like a paradise compared to that. So it's like funny 100%. To like if you went there, you'd have to like recreate that.
Well, so but that's what they would try and do eventually, isn't it? They would like sort of create conditions that would like spur on the growth of different things and stuff like that. But there's like obviously it would take quite a long time, and what he was saying is what is obviously the reason why they could do it on Mars is because there are enough resources where like you could power like generators and stuff that would then be able to like make like a
minerals and everything,
a living environment.
I saw a clip of Elon Musk. I can't remember who he was with, but he was walking and talking with someone, and he was like at one of his factories, like basically producing renewable energy. And the guy asked, it might have been Ed Sheeran. For some reason that pops into my head. I think it might have been Ed Sheeran. But they were speaking about, like, is there ever going to be a way to make the fully renewable energy? And he said, just 100 of these factories would be able to power the entire Earth.
Wow. That's mad, isn't it?
Which is crazy.
I find it crazy, like, things like that when you hear about, like, money and stuff as well. Like, it's like 500 billion or something could cure, like, world hunger, like, if the right things were set up, like, the right
was it
kind of
500 billion?
I think it was the latest one I saw was 500 billion.
Really?
And then it was like...
I imagine it would be less than that. 500 billion is so much money.
Yeah, I know, but... over like $1 trillion has been injected into the US economy in the last year of money. Do you know what I mean? So like to kind of to stop inflation and stuff.
Did you hear about what Elon Musk agreed to do with that whole sort of plan? I can't remember who it was, whether it was the United Nations or something, but somebody recently came out and said that like,
is this his tweet?
They said something like if we had £50 billion or something, or $50 billion, like we could cure world hunger. And Elon Musk made a tweet and said like, okay, put your money where your mouth is. If you send me a document with an in-depth plan
of how that would happen,
and I think it's realistic, then I will literally fund it.
I want to say it was like the CEO of like food.
The CEO
of food.
Mr. Food.
who did he tweet? It was definitely something to do with like.
Just type up like Elon Musk world hunger or like or something like that. And then it will come up, I'm sure.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Bullwinkle. Yeah, man, definitely. But I said I do think that like Mars is going to start being colonized. I don't know if it's going to be like a permanent thing. I think what would be quite interesting is at least it's quite cool to think that like we'll have like different bases, and then hopefully if the idea is just, like if they do send people like engineers and stuff that would be able to make Mars habitable enough that eventually obviously more and more people can go there, and then it's almost quite comforting to think that like if anything crazy did happen with Earth, at least we'd be able to almost like jump ship.
Yeah, at least as a backup.
Yeah, apparently there's like lots of like interesting differences between like Mars and Earth, which would have like a massive impact on our
Isn't there something
evolution
to do with like time? Like
of course,
days are different there, like
because
as
it's
in
a lot
the length
smaller.
of time.
Yes, because it's a lot smaller. Like time would go.
Was it
quicker?
Yeah,
time would go a lot quicker.
You'd imagine like our skin would change and everything as well to deal with the different
red.
Like,
yeah. And obviously, it's like they don't have like night and day the same because it's all to do with the atmosphere.
Yeah,
like our climate is all to do with the atmosphere, and like Mars doesn't have much of an atmosphere. That's why even though obviously like
you'd almost have to create an atmosphere on there.
Yeah, like like how day looks to us. They don't necessarily have like night and day the same thing on Mars, even though it still like orbits the sun the same and everything like that. Like. They don't have like what we have like night and day. So like there's times when the sun might be shining on that part of the moon of Mars, but you can still see like the space essentially. You can still see space, which is quite interesting, isn't it? You know,
crazy.
Which is but also apparently another thing that just is strange, which almost makes you think that we would evolve into like weird like grey type aliens or what's the technical name, Drew?
Zeta Reticuli.
Reticuli, sorry. Is like the gravity is a lot weaker on Mars, so it's strong enough to hold you down.
Yeah.
But it's like nowhere near.
You could jump real far.
Yeah,
basketball would be a different game.
Yeah. Everyone suddenly turned into Michael Jordan. But it's like we would obviously get a lot weaker as a species because of that.
Yeah,
I think like even like the most non-athletic person can obviously just like walk around unless there's like a medical reason why you can't. Like, do you know what I mean? You don't have to be freaking Arnold Schwarzenegger just to walk. But like,
I guess if you've got to be in a spacesuit all the time, that would almost be like weight training. They're heavy.
They'd have to.
Yeah, but it'd be interesting. You'd have to like obviously you could figure it out obviously, but it's like how heavy would that suit have to be to replicate just you walking around in like a pair of shorts and t-shirt?
And would we have to, or do we evolve into that new, like, you know what I mean, like lighter and?
Oh, I hate the idea.
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Because you wouldn't be able to come back, would you?
No, that's it.
If you came back to Earth, you'd just like.
Well, you might be able to, but it would be. I don't like the thought that, like, say you lived on Mars for like 10 years and you came home,
you'd be
like,
way weaker.
Yeah, like almost the idea that just walking around would almost feel like
lethargic.
Like, you know, you can buy like weight vests. Like I've got like a weight vest, like to wear sometimes for training. Just obviously, you know, you can do all sorts of stuff, whether it's just like sprinting in it or doing dips or chin ups, and it's just a way that's just like. To the idea that almost like it would feel like that when you came back to Earth. It's like a weird thought, like the thought that your legs would get like really stick thin and everything.
Yeah,
like it's not a good look, is it?
I wouldn't want to go to Mars. If I got the option, I wouldn't go.
No, I don't think I'd want to either. I like the idea that
I think it'd be cool when you first get there. The whole journey would be awesome. You'd be like, "Oh, we're going to Mars!
Yeah,
woo!" Then you get out, you see the Earth, you go, "Oh, it's amazing!" And then on day 4, you're looking around like, what to do now?
I'd much rather if every resource was put into actual cleaning up the Earth here, and making it more, because when it's doing its thing, it is like paradise. And you think of like the destruction of like the rainforest and all of that stuff, all of those things we're doing, like everything in the sea and that, like it is making it ugly and like cities and stuff like that. It's like, imagine putting all of those piles of resources that it would take to get to Mars into just making this like beautiful, like, you know what I mean, and then do that, like, do you know what I mean? It's almost looking too far beyond when we haven't sorted things out here, like first.
I think it's like it's one of those things, isn't it? Like it's like we obviously have got where we are today with the best of intentions, if you know what I mean, or at least I think the majority of people have. So it's like I don't think anybody's obviously thought like, you know, let's ruin the world. Obviously it's one of those things where when the industrial age hit, you know, suddenly you have factories popping up all over Europe, Britain was probably the biggest example at the time, and obviously in America, where suddenly you had all these factories that were like run on coal. You had like the invention of the steam engine, which was like all these trains just suddenly just run on coal, and it's just pumping out all that CO2, just pumping it out.
Yeah.
And it's like obviously as our science and medicine increased, more people were living longer from things that would have like killed you 1,000 years ago. Suddenly 200 years ago, some doctors would know to give, you have this medicine, or we'll do this surgery and it'll make you live. And then as a result, you've got more and more people living in houses. Towns and cities started developing similar to how they are today. But this is obviously before electric heating and central heating, so everyone would have heated their homes with coal. Wood, and again, every single chimney is just pumping that out. And then at first, it's just like, if the population of like say Britain is like 100,000, well then a few people lighting fires every now and again isn't going to be a big deal. But by the time you've got like a population of millions, and every single day you've got coal burning, and there's these factories with these massive flumes just coming out into the sky. Well, like obviously over the course of the hundreds of years where we've got to today, if every major nation is doing that, you get into where we are now, where we're suddenly like, oh, actually, this is actually like affecting our atmosphere, and this is affecting climate.
It's natural progression, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you would also say the next step of natural progression would to then be making it more sustainable.
Yeah, and like kind of if you're doing something like not consciously, like as in, we were just with the best intentions, as soon as it becomes an issue and it becomes like conscious, like as in like, oh yeah, that is an issue, then you correct it or you make it more sustainable. And like you say, like we've been able to innovate to get to where we are, so why not take that to the next level and like innovate, so we've still got the technology, but it's all like sustainable, as you said. That'd be like cool. It's like progression.
That's one good thing I thought really fair play to Elon Musk about, because obviously he's invented like the Tesla cars and everything. And so he's just like really big on like everything can just be run on electricity now. And like the cool thing about Tesla, which is like very different to say like people's perception of say like the Prius, is like Tesla cars are cool and they are fast.
That's my dream car.
They're like, me too,
they're
man.
So awesome.
They're amazing.
Apparently, I'd love to drive one, because apparently they feel like nothing you've ever driven. Apparently it doesn't even feel like a normal car. Like apparently when you accelerate on it, because for a start, like you think of accelerating in like a normal car, like a petrol or a diesel, obviously it goes and like whether you've got a turbo or whatever that kicks in, and big V8 or V10 engines, and you think about that like classic thing, but because it's so quiet, but apparently like the acceleration is almost feels almost more like G-force or something.
Yeah.
And apparently everybody that's like driven it is like, whoa.
Yeah. Crazy. That'd be.
I think it's crazy that they can drive themselves.
Yeah.
I'd just do that all the time. Anywhere you go, you just have like it's like having a chauffeur to anywhere you go.
Yeah. It was quite cool. I was like, when he was like talking about it, he was like saying that in his mind, like anything that you do that you potentially don't have to do, he sees as like a problem. So that's why he's like made like the cars that they can drive themselves. So it's like, well, why would you drive a car if you can make the car drive it for you? So like if you say you had to commute to work, you could say you had to commute like 2 hours to work every day. That could be 2 hours of extra work. Or you could work on your way home. So that's 4 hours of extra production. Or productivity every single day. But I think it's really cool how he is like really forward thinking like that. So apparently he's like bringing out this new Tesla truck.
Oh yeah,
and all sorts.
Cybertruck.
Yeah, and it's just really cool. All this different stuff he's coming up with.
Oh mate, Nikola Tesla.
Nikola Tesla, yeah.
I
think that's how he named it afterwards.
Yeah, because it was about electricity and that. But I'm like talking about like what do you think about like the next step of like technology with like free energy? Like obviously all of our energy at the moment is either like through like coal or like gases and things like that, or nuclear, like splitting the atom, massive heat, like getting the energy, running the turbines, getting the electricity from that. But Nikola Tesla basically knowing that our atmosphere and everything was electric, so his like thing would pull electricity out of the sky and kind of
power devices
and everything. It's like, and it almost like wireless. So the next step for me is almost like wireless electricity.
Yeah, so it's obviously it's almost like the same thing as like radio.
Yeah.
So obviously you don't like plug in the radio. Well, you do for the electricity, but the radio waves are just in the air. So
I think what you're saying about like productivity and stuff like that, like a lot of the stuff holding us back is the fact that we have to pay a lot of money for electricity because it costs a lot of money to produce electricity.
That's a big like theory about why he was killed, isn't it? Yeah. So a lot of people think that I can't remember if they say
he wasn't even killed. He was just he died in a hotel fell like on his own, old age, skint.
Oh, did he?
Completely broke, right? And but he was like one of the craziest inventors ever.
Wasn't he like ruined though?
Yeah, Rockefeller basically funded his they call it the Tesla Tower or the Nikola Tesla Tower, and it was this thing that would be able to pull down energy from the atmosphere and stuff. But Nikola Tesla actually stopped it. Yeah. Rockefeller was funding it, but he stopped it because they knew like if you focused that energy, you could turn it into a weapon. And Nikola Tesla did not want it to be a weapon. He wanted it to be a thing of free energy for people and stuff, and to use the technology for that. But Rockefeller was instantly like trying to like almost weaponize it for the armies and stuff. So he was like, "Nah, I'm not doing it anymore," and he just stopped doing it.
I heard something about this like massive laser weapon or something.
That's it.
Yeah, is that what you're on about?
Yeah,
Is that what
Tesla
it is?
Tower. Yeah,
the Tesla.
But they would have used it as a laser, but
like
he didn't want it.
They described it as like a death ray or something.
It would have been like that, but he didn't want that to be used in that way. So he refused to keep working on it, even though they were all Rockefeller were funding it.
Right.
And then he kind of went into like ruin because he lost the funding and all that stuff. But he was like a crazy mind.
Wasn't his like lab like ransacked and there was like loads of stuff destroyed and all of his like work was burned or something like that. I've heard something like that. This is just off my memory. I don't know. I might be talking rubbish.
I can't remember, to be honest, but crazy. Like I know a lot of his stuff was like patented and things like that, and like he people use some of the designs now to try and recreate these devices that will create free energy. And there's people around the world like trying to almost like kind of crack the Tesla like.
I'd actually be really interested to hear somebody like Elon Musk's view on Tesla, like how much of it is fact and how much of it is fiction, because he's almost become this like cult, almost like mythological figure. And I would like to hear somebody that's like obviously Elon Musk, who is like such a genius when it comes to science and all that stuff. That's I'd love to like hear his view on it.
That's it, and that's what kind of blows my mind with it is the fact that like if you took money out of the equation for electricity and energy, then that's when our growth could be exponential. That's when we can like just almost put our resources into whatever we want. You know what I mean? Because you're not having to pay for it.
The question is, what point does it need to get to for everyone to combine and go, all right, we need to fix this? Because let's be honest, the world at the moment, I saw something the other day saying that we've now gone past a point where no matter what we do, we can't stop like global warming, and it's now past the point where it will be the end of the world. But like,
I think that's really like negative thinking though.
Yeah,
'cause I think all it takes is some genius like Elon Musk to like create something that can like undo the damage, or like pull the carbon out of the atmosphere, which is potentially doable, but we just don't know how to do it yet.
My question is, what point does it need to get to?
Yeah.
Like
that's
until people start focusing on that and go, all right, we need to fix this now.
Anyway, we've got to listen to a track now. This is Children of the Grape by Black Sabbath. Stick around. You know what I just realised was pretty cool?
What's that?
We were talking obviously about like a bit about climate change and about the earth and everything. That songs we just listened to, Sick Sad Little World by Incubus, Climate Change, and then Somewhere I Belong. Where do we belong if not on
Mars?
On our luscious... Yeah, that's where we belong. I was going to say on our luscious green earth, but yeah, maybe we do belong on Mars. Maybe all those little Martians that are coming down from the future live on Mars, and they're like, we don't want to live on Mars anymore. So can you just like stop climate change, please? So
that's my favourite Looney Tunes character.
Which one?
The Martian.
Oh yeah, he's got like a little gladiator helmet.
Marvin the Martian.
Hasn't he got like a little gladiator helmet? Or
yeah. I think he just walks around. He's like, he's just like squatted.
Yeah, he's pretty cool, isn't he? He's pretty cool. But yeah, it would be quite like, as I said, I think a lot of people like are really negative about sort of climate change. I think it like can't be undone. And I don't know, maybe we won't invent anything that will be able to like undo the damage in time. But as I said, to be fair, there are some absolute geniuses in the world. Like people that are just like crazy geniuses that are working out there right now. Because I remember hearing like the theory that like, and apparently it'd be really hard to do because of the nature of like what carbon's like. So it like would be like really like inefficient, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But obviously you can make like with most substances on the periodic table, you can have them in either like a gas, a liquid, or a solid.
Yeah.
So it almost like the idea that you could pull carbon out of the air as a gas and almost like put it almost through like a converter, and then it almost like comes out the other side as like a carbon block like a block of carbon, almost like a brick. But the idea is like, how would you do that in a way that was efficient? So apparently, like you could power it with solar panels, which obviously would be like such a super green way of like sorting out the issues. But apparently the issue is like the solar panels would have to be like so big because it would require so much energy to convert carbon from a gas into a solid. The solar panels would have to be like immensely massive.
So it's this thing about energy again. You know, when if there was like free energy, like, do you know what I mean? And it was that wasn't a limitation of it, like how to produce the.
If we had Tesla here, we might have already cracked it. Might have already cracked.
And I think as well, like intuitively, like the idea of like the Earth can like bounce back and stuff. Like if you leave it to it, like say like Chernobyl, like look at something like Chernobyl and like look what's happened there. With nature and stuff, like there was this like nuclear kind of thing like there and everything, Holocaust, and like nature has literally just like completely overwhelmed the whole of Chernobyl and like all growing through like the you know, like the schools and everything. Have you seen like pictures of it? And it's just like,
man,
like, you know, it's
like,
just bounced back.
And like not even just the plants and stuff. There's a lot of like animal wildlife there as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so like the wildlife has thrived as well completely. So it shows you like,
isn't it still the case that like humans wouldn't still be able to live there?
Do you want to know how long it would take for Chernobyl to be habitable?
By humans? Yeah, go on.
20,000 years.
Are you kidding me?
It's crazy, isn't it?
What, just because of the radioactive?
Just because it's got to obviously go down to its half-life and then half that.
Mate, that is so insane. When you hear that almost like makes me feel more panicked than the global warming thing. Only because I think like 20,000 years is so ridiculously long.
And this is what I think with nuclear, you know, about what we were saying about nuclear bombs and then like say like nuclear energy and all of that kind of stuff. It's like
the aftermath.
The threat of it, but not for nature as such. Like nature will get by. Nature will be able to overcome it. It's us that have got we got it. If anything happened like that, it's us that would be gone.
Well, yeah, because time is relative, and obviously 20,000 years to like the Earth might not seem like a big deal, but to us as a humankind, like 2,000 years ago, like when the Roman Empire was like the head of the world, like that seems to me like a very long time ago. Even though I know that relatively it's sort of not. Do you know what I mean? But obviously, to us, it is.
Yeah.
It is. But the fact that so that's just 2,000 years ago, and then to think that it would take 20,000 years just for humankind to like even have a settlement in Chernobyl is like crazy. What's was it you Coy that was saying last week about the Fukushima, and that it could like be felt in Wales or something?
Oh no, that was me saying about or it might have been, I can't remember what nuclear event it was. It might have been Chernobyl, or
I think it was Fukushima.
Right. But
the one in Japan.
Yeah, there was there's sensors at Hinkley Point here.
Oh yeah.
That picked up where we live, Hinkley Point in Somerset. There's a nuclear.
It's the biggest nuclear power station in UK.
Yeah, and the sensors could pick up
the Fukushima leak, like
emission of radiation, and there was like things happening with the sheep in Wales. Like so, it's just like
it's crazy because like you couldn't really get much further away from the UK than Japan.
Yeah,
like obviously like the Pacific Ocean, like Asia is like almost like directly the opposite side of the earth, isn't it? Like Australia, Asia. So like literally you couldn't be further away from us. So that is
crazy.
That just almost just goes to show how crazy like nuclear power is.
Terrifying.
Freaks me out. I remember like hearing like one thing though that like Elon Musk said, which I thought was almost like I think like demystifies almost like, because I think you hear like radiation, just like radiation. You hear radiation and it seems almost like an instantly scary term. Like you think of like radiation and you think straight away like nuclear, like like you know like you're gonna die. Like, radiation, but like the sun emits radiation, so every time you're outside, you are essentially taking in radiation.
Everything emits radiation. It's funny as well. There's the pile cap, which is basically the nuclear reactor. The pile cap is basically the thing that you can stand on top of. Like it's like the top of the nuclear reactor, but there's like a load of concrete, like a hell of a lot of concrete that surrounds the reactor. So if anything happened, it would keep the radiation
like buffer
in.
it.
Yeah, and when you like how well it keeps it in. Like you can stand on top of the pile cap and you can have a like a hazelnut. I think it was a hazelnut or a walnut or something like that. And the walnut is actually emitting more radiation than what you're getting from standing on top of the nuclear reactor. Like that's pretty cool, like safe wise and stuff.
Yeah. Like I think like
everything emits it a little bit.
Yeah. Like think about how many people enjoy sunbathing or like just enjoy going to hot countries and just walking around in the sun. Like when you're doing that, you're taking in a lot of radiation, but it's just you're not thinking of it of like, oh, I'm bathing in radiation right now. Yeah. You're just like, oh, I'm just having like some fun in the sun, you know? Or it's like bananas as well. Like bananas are really radioactive, aren't they? Did you know about that?
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so like apparently like I think they say like you shouldn't eat more than like 4 bananas a day.
What?
I can't remember if it's the potassium. I think it's potassium. I think potassium is like radioactive. So potassium is very good for you. Potassium is one of the electrolytes. So like in all sports drinks that you have, there'll be potassium because you need potassium as one of the main electrolytes. If you have a lack of it, you'll feel like groggy and lethargic.
Yeah.
But if you have too much of it, it can be like detrimental to your health because it technically is radioactive.
Yeah.
That's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's just interesting. It's like just a cool, interesting little fact.
So do animals get affected by it? Think about monkeys.
What, like
they're going through a lot of bananas a day, aren't they?
They certainly are in like cartoons and stuff. I don't know actually how much like actual monkeys eat bananas. Do they?
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah,
they definitely like them.
I guess it depends. I guess it depends like what species and like if they live in a country with bananas. Do you know what I mean?
I like monkeys.
Can you Google? I like monkeys. Would you Google like what species of monkeys eat bananas, or what species of
do monkeys like bananas?
Yeah. Let's find out. Let's find out the in-depth knowledge.
Monkeys do enjoy bananas.
Yeah. Is that all it says? That's the in-depth
A study
research.
from 1936 even offered monkeys fruit, vegetables, nuts, and bread to see what they would choose to eat more of. Bananas ranked right behind grapes, nuts, and bread.
Oh, so they actually prefer grapes, nuts, and bread.
Ranked right behind grapes, nuts, and bread were last.
Oh.
Okay.
What? Are you trying to tell me that those monkeys don't appreciate a nice sourdough with some extra virgin olive oil and balsamic vinegar?
No Subway.
What? No meatball sub?
But they'll eat grapes.
Yeah. But you all eat grapes. What, are you sad?
I like grapes. I had some grapes the other day actually that were like cotton candy grapes. You heard of them?
I've not heard of them.
Are they real?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Like real grapes.
Like in Asda and everything.
He was just tripping at the time.
Yeah.
They just made him up in his brain.
Yeah. So and they literally just taste like cotton candy.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, are they like
try
genetically modified?
Try them. Anyone listening, try those grapes.
Yeah.
They're incredible.
Most things that we even have nowadays are in some way modified by humankind.
Yeah.
I imagine there's a lot of sugar in them.
Yeah. It's like that fact, it's surprising how many people don't know this, but did you know that like broccoli is man-made?
When you told me that, man, that blew my mind as well. It's like crossed, isn't it? It's like a cauliflower and something else.
I think it's derived.
And a cabbage.
They basically like genetically modified a cabbage.
Yeah.
Until eventually they made broccoli.
Yeah.
Did you not know that?
That's ridiculous.
That's cool, isn't it? Because it's like I remember when I found out, it like blew my mind as well. Because I think I just sort of like assumed that like broccolis just grow somewhere.
Well, so are carrots, aren't they?
I think
carrots are modified to have more vitamin.
Really?
So
I think carrots are natural though. I think carrots do grow in the wild.
Yeah. You
can get like wild carrots.
I think they've been genetically modified to have more vitamin D. It is vitamin D that help your eyes.
Right. Yeah.
So that cures like. That's why people say eat carrots to see in the dark.
Yeah.
Because actually, no. I think the vitamins you have. Like
I want to say off the top of my head. Actually, I think it's vitamin A.
Vitamin A.
I think so. Vitamin A is the one for eyes. I think.
What vitamins?
I think it's vitamin A. Let's see. I'm putting myself on the spot here. Let's find out. Coy is looking up which vitamin it is that makes you good to see in the dark.
Vitamin A.
Yeah, I know my vitamins, boys. Yeah, because obviously that's why, like during the war, didn't they? They wanted people to encourage, like, people to grow their own vegetables and eat more and stuff. And one of the things that they said was like, eat your carrots because it makes you see in the dark. Because then, like, obviously the Germans used to raid at night time. So then it would make you more able to like see the planes in the sky and then like report it to your local authorities.
It must have been so crazy to be like living during the Blitz, and you have to.
So that's my little impression of a.
And you have to like black out your windows with cardboard and.
Yeah. And the idea that like you're just going about your life, but like tonight your home might just get like bombed to smithereens.
Yeah.
And all like the kids who would go what do they call it? Not is it evacuated?
Yep.
Like
Evacuees.
Yeah, and they'd go and live somewhere like because my granddad lived in Edinburgh, and he just spent like 2 years just with this random family in like the country, like because Edinburgh
used to get bombed. So all of obviously our major cities would get bombed in quite like. And for like several reasons, and some of them are actually really callous. One of them, the main like strategies of the Nazis wasn't just to like bomb our factories and stuff that like would obviously be the things that are producing our weaponry, our tanks, our planes, but they also tried to bomb all of our like significant sites, like so things like cathedrals, historic sites, because they thought that it would like make our morale,
spirit.
and then make us want to surrender. But one thing actually that I quite like about like, the British people, it actually did like the opposite of that.
Yeah, should annoy them.
Yeah, it just lit a fire under our asses and just made us be like, actually, no, like you are like you're like picking on. I think that's one good thing about like the British spirit.
You can bomb my house, but not my cathedral.
Yeah. If you bomb my like local cricket field, I'm gonna be so angry, especially if you're Coy over here because he's secretly a cricket master. Little unknown fact for you there. Yeah, so my grandma lived in a little village called Stegursey in Somerset, and during the war, she had like I think it was like 3 or 4 kids from like London that were just like living in their house, and she said that from her like earliest memories, so she was born in 1940, so she'd have only been like a really little girl, but she said that she used to sleep on the landing because there would be like kids from London that were sleeping in their rooms. Because obviously, wanting to be good hosts, my great grandparents were like, "Oh, it's okay, you're like a little 3-year-old kid. Like they're very like they'll sleep anywhere as long as like make them a little bed." So her and her older sister Joan would sleep on the landing in like little like camping beds, and then these kids from London would sleep in their rooms.
I want to say my granddad was like an evacuee and came down to this area because of it, and he's shown me before.
Where
like,
was he
photos.
from originally, man?
London, I want to
really?
say.
Yeah. Well, obviously, makes sense.
And he's shown me photos of like the fish and chip shop, like right next to his house, just being bombed to smithereens, like cuttings out from like the paper and stuff.
That is crazy. And I know that my granddad. So like, my granddad was born in the Isle of Man, and he was sent over to Widnes because the Isle of Man had like one of the biggest prisoner of war camps on the island, and as a result, obviously, it was like quite like a center of like interest for all like the Nazis and their allies. Because obviously they put all of the prisoners of war on the Isle of Man because like you're not going to escape. I mean, nobody was going to survive trying to escape in the Irish Sea unless you have a boat. If you have like a massive prisoner of war camp in the Isle of Man, then it's like even if you were say like a German or Italian that escaped, like what are you going to do? Yeah. I mean, you're not going to survive in a little... And right, even if you find like a little rowing boat, you're not going to escape. And obviously at the time, the British Navy was still one of, if not the biggest and most powerful navy in the world. Like, you're going to be discovered.
You would be found and you would be destroyed.
Also, the Manx people have always had like a reputation as well of being a little bit more like hardcore with their punishment. So like they're a bit more like old-fashioned. So it wasn't even until... they used to have this thing called... that where they'd give people the birch, and that's what like in the Manx and in the Isle of Man, and what that would basically be. And it wasn't even banned until something like in like the 1980s. But what that was basically is like if you broke certain laws, you would basically like your sentence would be as well as like serving time in jail or in community service and stuff like that, would be getting essentially like lashes. Which is obviously like kind of really like it hasn't happened in England for a long time. They used to call it giving the birch because they would do it with birch twigs. Yeah. So they would basically like tie together loads and loads of like thin birch branches. Yeah. And then they would like whip you until your back was just like completely bleeding.
It's crazy.
But I mean, it's a good deterrent against crime because I think what's going to be like more of a deterrent, like an £80 fine or like
some whips on your back. Yeah.
Especially because like it's as I said, ones that proper like give you scars on your back from like literally like your back's just fully bleeding. That's pretty savage, isn't it?
I always thought it was mad in World War II as well. Like it was something I didn't know until I watched a film recently about like the Channel Islands that were occupied by like German Nazis and stuff. Like is it Guernsey?
Isle of Wight. Yeah, I think Jersey and Guernsey. Yeah,
Guernsey definitely was, and because that was what this film was about. But it seemed mad. I was like, whoa, like I didn't realise that any actual like English like kind of like little islands and stuff. And their normal way of life would have been like proper English and like the little cottages and stuff. And then there's just like Germans running it, and it was crazy. Like they were obviously like really strict on them. But it was like they would bring in like slaves, like prisoners of war from like different places, like the Nazis would, and they'd be like absolutely savage to them, like Jews and stuff, like completely malnourished, like they kind of let the people of Guernsey, from what it looked like, live a normal life, but you know, totally occupied and like really like kind of nine. But you know, those guys, like, because some of the people from Guernsey would like help them and stuff, and then they would get killed and they would get like punished and things like that. But yeah, it's just mad, isn't it? Like mad times. But
it's one of those interesting things. It's like, because obviously the Nazis were like about as racist as you can be. So like almost like their entire worldview was like based on like your ethnic origin.
Yeah.
But they actually, like, in terms of like ethnicity, they actually like very much liked the British people because they saw us as like the same as them.
Yeah.
So obviously like we are like an Anglo-Saxon people, and even you know, like obviously like the Welsh and the Scottish and the Irish are like more of like a Gaelic Celtic ancient Brythonic people. But even so, they're all like people that the Germans think highly of, which is like in itself sounds like stupid to say because it's just such a, like a racist way of thinking. But it's like, if you're like a Germanic people, so they also like people from Scandinavia. So the Germans liked like the Dutch, they liked the people from Scandinavia, they liked the people from Great Britain because they saw us as like we are like the top of like the genetic spectrum, which is like hilarious, really. I especially think it's hilarious when you like think like, you know, say for example, there's a lot of Polish people that live in Britain nowadays, and like, don't get me wrong, I think that some people might say like there's something that you can't quite put your finger on, but you're like there's something about them that might look a little bit Polish, but also you could walk past a Polish person and you have no idea whether they're Polish or English, for example. But even though that's the case, and even though they look very similar to us in terms of like, you know, there's like quite like a wide range. You know, there could be like a Polish person with like black hair and brown eyes. There could be a Polish person with like freckles and like red hair and like blue eyes. But they thought of Slavs, like the Nazis thought of as like the Slavic people, which are like what Polish people are, like Polish, a lot of the countries in Eastern Europe, as like much lower than the quote unquote Germanic peoples, which is like really hilarious, isn't it? It's like there's literally almost like exactly the same, but you're like so racist, you're even like subcategorizing like different types of white people into like the good white people, quote unquote, and like the sub, almost like the subhuman white people. It's like, how the hell can you tell the difference between like a Polish person and like a French person and like an English person? Apart from the fact that the French person's obviously going to have like a baguette and a glass of red wine.
I knew that was the next thing.
A baguette, a berry, like, some cross legs, and some hairy armpits.
Yeah.
Some hairy armpits. No offense to any French people out there. But,
or hippies.
Yeah. No, but yeah, obviously apart from that, like you're not going to tell the difference. But yeah, it's crazy just like how racist the Nazis were. But yeah, the Nazis wanted the British people to be on their side, or at least they did for a very long time. I don't know if it was still the case by the end of the Second World War. By that point, they were probably a little bit annoyed at us. But yeah, but obviously
Enigma.
Yeah, but and obviously like Neville Chamberlain, who was the Prime Minister of Britain at the start of Second World War. He didn't want Britain to go to war,
right,
with Germany.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, you can't turn a blind eye against injustice for too long. And obviously, when Winston Churchill came into power, he was just like, no. And then obviously, really sort of like started kicking ass. Although to be fair, we were already at war when Neville Chamberlain was Prime Minister, but he just was not a good war Prime Minister.
Well, it was the Labour government that actually backed Winston Churchill. It wasn't like his own party.
Yeah, that almost just goes to show though how bad Neville Chamberlain was as a Prime Minister, because Neville Chamberlain was a Labour leader. But I think he was like so much of a pacifist, and it's like in wartime you cannot have you cannot have a Prime Minister that's like a die-hard pacifist in times of war, because it's just almost like too much of like a paradox, too much of a conundrum. You can't be at war and at the same time be a massive pacifist. I think at heart most people are pacifists, and I think that's a good thing, and I think we should all strive to be pacifists. I don't think many people, unless you're like a psychopath or like, you know, absolutely crazy, who thinks that of like war is like a good thing? Like war obviously isn't a good thing. Because war is like creates like death and anarchy. But sometimes things happen. There are like situations that will happen, like global events, which almost like make it
unavoidable.
Necessary. Unavoidable, and makes it necessary. And obviously, like in the case of the Second World War, and it gets to the point where like you almost need to accept that there's a war on now, and almost just need to like make sure that you are pushing for the most like just thing to happen. Do you know what I mean?
You know, it's a bit of a shame, isn't it, that it takes something like that when you think of like what, like on the positive side of what it can do for like people. You know, nothing like a war to like bring people together and stuff, and like have this shared collective goal and vision and like
camaraderie
and like helping each other and stuff. Like my nan and granddad would tell me stories about like, you know, like rationing and everything, and everything was rationed, and they'd have to like share everything and like be really like proper community based. But like we can lose that sometimes when we get so comfortable. We can become more isolated. But like in something like time of turmoil, like, you know, you've got to band together.
I think that's like almost like what we were saying about like the Blitz as well. Like obviously like it was Hitler's goal to almost like destroy our morale and dishearten us and make us want to surrender, but it did the opposite.
Yeah.
In London, it was almost like after every single bombing, the British people, the more people, it would be like almost like you'd see your neighbour as like more and more of like a family member because you're all in it together. It's like almost like a bit of being like the member of the same, like supporting the same team, like in like sport.
I was gonna say it almost reminds me weirdly of like the Euros.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
because everyone just bands together. But then obviously, if something does go wrong, after the Euros, obviously we got to the final. Spoiler alert, lost. in the penalty shootout. And
what a surprise!
But the three people who missed were all like black people.
Yeah.
And then like the amount of racism that was coming up the next day is just like disgusting.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about that.
Especially considering it's like in a time when everyone's so together. For this entire period, and then the second like
something
it's not going
wrong,
right, you just flip it on like the people that you've just been celebrating for, and
100%, man. Yeah, no, it's awful, isn't it? You got to like wonder why as well that it's happened, because I swear, like in the 90s, say, or in the 2000s, like say, I don't know, I'm not like a massive football fan, so I'm trying to like struggle to think of like a best example. Imagine if like 10 years ago it was like Emile Heskey and like Ashley Cole,
right?
That were doing I don't think Emile Heskey would ever be doing the penalties, but like back then you wouldn't have had that sort of racism.
You probably would.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, teams like you can't.
Why do you say that?
Because, for instance, in like Premier League, teams have been renowned for like racism, especially
Seriously?
when like just using a random example, like Chelsea.
Right.
Chelsea have been like accused of it before, and like they're one of their like greatest strikers of all time, Didier Drogba.
Oh yeah.
But they're still like, as a fan base, like have been caught. And obviously it's not everyone.
No, I was going to say, because I personally, other than that thing with like the Euros, I can't think of anything that I've ever heard like in mainstream.
There is a lot of racism in football. I think Italy as a country is like really bad for it as well.
Italy are very racist towards what, like
in sports,
different coloured players.
Yeah.
That's mad, isn't it? Makes you wonder, like, just like strange, isn't it? To me, it just seems strange.
It's getting to a point now where like players will just walk off the pitch if it's happening,
right?
Which is like as it should be. Obviously, don't play if the crowd are
almost like if you're not appreciated, then take your talents elsewhere.
Yeah,
sort of thing,
and the team will like come together, obviously, and be like, you know, we don't stand for that. Whereas back in the day, they would almost just be made to get on with it.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's really strange. It's funny because I didn't even really like. I don't know. I don't know if it's just like my ignorance, but I do feel like it's gotten worse though. Like I feel like when I was growing up.
Do you feel like it's just more in your face?
I was going to say, I think it's probably
more like broadcast.
Probably because there's more of a challenge against it now, and people are obviously.
But I mean, I can't remember ever even like thinking like, oh, that was a little bit racist, but there wasn't like. Do you know what I mean? I can't ever remember like hearing anything on telly or like watching sport, and there was like ever a comment about somebody that wasn't like your stereotypical just like white British person. Do you know what I mean? Or any like derogatory comment. I just can't remember ever anything like that, or like, you know, or just like people that, you know. Whether it was like Asian coloured people like in like school and that, like, you know, literally in my school, I can't remember like ever anyone being really racist to them. Or if they did, it was like stupid kid stuff, like the same way that, you know, like stupid kids sometimes call each other like fat or like ginger. It wasn't ever like it wasn't like die hard racism, if you know what I mean. It was like a throwaway comment, and then it like the other kid might be like F you, and then it would be like the teacher would discipline both of you, and then that would just be it. And like often that they'd be friends, those people. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. It's strange. I don't know. Maybe it is, as you said. Maybe it's just because there's so much of more of a spotlight on it. I've just never understood racism personally. Like I just think
it's hard to comprehend, isn't it?
Yeah. I just think like as I said with our whole Nazi thing, like the fact that they would even like subcategorize even just like actual Caucasians.
Yeah, like why would you even think that? It's hard, like I said, it's hard to comprehend because it's just not like a humane thought, is it?
Yeah. I mean, being racist to Jews is like bad enough. And obviously it's like, you know, but the fact that like, you know, because a lot of Slavs, as I said, like Polish people and stuff were killed in gas chambers as well. Like the fact that you would be like so against like a different ethnic group that you would literally round them up, put them in like a gas chamber, and then just like systematically in this like weirdly clinical way, just kill them all, regardless of whether it's like women, children. Like that's like actually like so evil.
Yeah, I watched a really interesting film like the other day called The Nightingale, but it was brutal and it was hard to watch. And it was about the colonisation of Australia, like the British colonisation of Australia, and like what kind of everyone did to like, the Aborigines and stuff, and it was also a place where you know, a lot of like the criminals and everything from like the UK and Ireland and that would go over. Well, that's
Australia. That's what it pretty much was.
Yeah.
So they sent all the criminals from Australia and from Britain, the UK to Australia.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And
it's like a bit of a joke nowadays. Like all Australians are like, you know, watch it out, mate. Because remember, at the end of the day, we're criminals. So don't mess with us, like, you know.
No, that's it. And it kind of really like portrayed like the brutality of like what it must have been to just even live in a time like that, because like we've talked about before, like, you know, people are less like less kind of schooled and less and cultured in that way. So their IQ's not as high, but then like a lot more racist, a lot more like derogatory and all of that stuff. But it seemed insane because they actually saw them as like a completely different kind of, they didn't even see them as people, you know, like these the Aborigines and stuff,
almost like discovering like a species of ape or something.
That's it. It's like it goes to that level where they would actually think they were so different that you know, like,
well, don't get me wrong, in some ways they were very different, and I don't mean that in like a disrespectful way. What I purely mean by that is obviously like the world was a much bigger place back then, and by that point, like, because Australia is like much younger as a country than even America. But when the British like inhabited what we now know as Australia, obviously I think the Britain was like as advanced a country in the world as you would find. We had like, you know, massive like ships at sea. You know, we had industry. We had like intricate like medicine, science, mathematics, clothes making, massive palaces, works of art. The whole of Europe were like selling all these massive intricate pieces of art together. You could, as a British person, go to Italy and like walk around the Colosseum and view all the greatest like bits of Italian history that went back thousands of years. And then imagine going to Australia and you see the Aborigines, and like they were just living like a tribal life. They were pretty much almost like in the Stone Age, and I mean that with like the greatest respect. That doesn't obviously don't mean that in a negative way. You could argue that's how we should live, but at the end of the day, it would have seemed crazy.
But what is crazy to me is how they saw something like that and how they treated people like that.
Because at the end of the day, they're still human beings.
Yeah, it's still human beings, and just that way of life and everything they knew and all that. Like, there was a tribal elder that actually was involved in the production of this film, like trying to get some of these things across. But it was like they did put like a bit of like ritual in like the movie and stuff, and like and the English like colonels and stuff, like they would rely on the Aborigines to like trek across the land, and like they had such a amazing knowledge about all of like, you know, how to trek through it and that, because that was their homeland. But then if something went wrong, they'd just shoot them in the head. And it was just like, what? Like, how can that have been a thing? You know, they were that like disposable and that like kind of, you know.
I do think that's like almost like,
I don't know how people can be like that, even if you are the most advanced like country in the world, and that, like, as a human being, like morally, like I don't understand how like it was normal to not be moral.
It's not humane.
I think
it was like, but it was normal not to be humane. It was like it was celebrated, you know.
Well, I'm not sure if it was like celebrated. I think it was just normal. I think that's the thing. I don't think people would have like cheered about it. I think it was just normal, and I think that's one thing I've thought, obviously, as like a big fan or like, you know, student of history, like somebody that's fascinated by history and is always looking it up. I think we don't realise how good we've got it today. We don't don't realise how far we've come, because
most
like
comfortable, most
like so
advanced.
So like obviously recently it was like Remembrance Sunday and everything like that. And I was like looking up all this different stuff on ancestry, about, because I knew already that my great grandfather served during the Second World War. and several other members of my family. And like my partner was like, because we've got ancestry.co.uk, which is like really fascinating. I love all that stuff. But my partner was like, oh, I think that she thought that she had a relative that served during the war, and she just remembers that there is the gravestone of that person in Spaxton Cemetery, where she grew up. But she doesn't know any details about it. All she knows is that it's like a relative of her father's, of her birth father's. So she was like, can you do some research? And she thought she knew the name, so I looked the fella up. Anyway, she was like a bit sad because it turned out that like, and this was like a fairly common thing because of how much of a depressing and brutal war it was. But basically, he deserted in the trenches during the First World War. He tried to flee the battle. He tried to flee war, and obviously that was like considered completely unacceptable in the British Army. So
punishable by death.
They just shot him. So the British Army, his superior officers, they would the majority of the time. I'm not sure if it was like the standard rule, but I know that like the majority of the time, if you were caught deserting, you were severely punished, if not killed.
Court-martialed, right?
Yeah.
That's called?
Yeah, I think like nowadays it would be just a court-martial, but in those days I think it was like pretty much always punishable by death.
Right.
So she was obviously then pretty sad, especially after like I'd been researching and it was a bit more like glorious, I guess, if you could find. You could say like, you know, like honorably discharged after like, you know, shrapnel going off, and served in all these like he won like medals for like being parts of like successful battles and stuff. And then it was like a bit sad for her to hear that like actually her relative, her like ancestor tried to flee the conflict and then was actually just like killed by our own people.
Yeah.
So that's like not even that's like the reason obviously just made me think of it. It's like the reason why I'm saying it's like it was so normal back then. You wouldn't even have to be, say, an Aborigine. You could be a British person.
Oh, totally.
If you were like if you were on board, if you were a sailor in the Navy and you stepped too much out of line, you could be severely punished if not killed. If you just tried to flee a battle, if you just suddenly thought, wait a minute, what the hell am I doing here? This battle is pointless. Everyone around me is dying. This is depressing and mental. Why am I here again? I'm actually just going to leave. Which almost like in your head, you feel like you probably should have the power to do. And then everyone's just like, no, if you leave, I'm going to shoot you. I'm going to leave anyway. Bang, dead.
That's it. It seems like the world was a lot more of a brutal place in like every way.
That's what I mean. I don't think we realise how easy we have it. And I think we need to be appreciative of that. I think sometimes... I think there's a balance, don't get me wrong. Like, I think it's good to speak up on like concerns you have and things that you think are unjust in society, but I think that sometimes it's pushed too far the other way in terms of like we act like we've got it so hard now. And I'm like, don't get me wrong, there's things about society that could always be improved, but let's be appreciative of the fact that we live in the best era probably ever now. You know, like there's no capital punishment in the UK. You know, as I said, you might get court-martialed now if you say try to desert something, but you're not going to be shot.
Yeah,
you're not going to be shot on the spot by your own side and stuff like that. That's crazy.
I was speaking to my brother.
Which one?
Jake.
Oh yeah, obviously he's a massive history nut, isn't he?
Yeah.
Got a degree in medieval.
We were speaking about work.
Yeah.
Right. And how crazy it is the amount like people work now. Like back in the day, even when like I don't know, Middle Ages, right? You would think these people would be almost slaves, constantly, you know,
serfs
working.
Was the term?
Serfs. Yeah, serfs. Constantly working, you know, they might be catching fish,
farming.
Working
in like a lord's manor or something, or a castle.
But they would work like not many hours at all. Not compared to what we work now.
Yeah.
They'd work like 5-6 hours.
That's crazy. I would have thought they'd be like 12 hours at least.
Yeah, so as much as
obviously
they,
it depends on the occupation.
Yeah, as much as they like obviously were made to work, and that's seen as like, oh, that must have been so awful. Nowadays, the amount we work, like on average, is extraordinarily higher, especially considering it's like 5 days a week. They would get like multiple days off, you know, that kind of stuff. So looking at it like that, we were saying we think in the future there's almost going to be people looking back at this time now and thinking, that's crazy that people work that much.
Well, it's gotten a little bit better than it was. So like during the Victorian times, it was like off the scale. So you would have kids working
when the industrial age happened.
You would have kids working in factories like 14-hour days or like 16-hour days.
You can see it like going that way to being less and less work, can't you?
Yeah, I think people are getting a bit fed up of just like spending their whole entire lives working, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was it. Like the promise of technology, it was like, oh, you know, that's going to help us work less. But it's been the opposite. It's like people, you know, we've gone down. We're working like way more because it's just like
I tell you what bothers.
Everywhere.
I tell you what bothers me as well, and as I've always found really annoying. It's not just that. It's not just the working hours, but it's like when our grandparents would have been young, say, as long as you showed like an aptitude for something. Like
you could follow
you
it.
You could sort of get some work experience somewhere, just start working somewhere, and then you would build yourself up, and then you would. Whereas now it's like you just almost like everything you need to do, you need to like train for like a year or two, if not more, just to even start doing the thing. Yeah. I'm like, look, I'm clearly good at this thing. Do I really have to now waste between sort of 1 and 4 years of my life,
or even
getting a little piece of paper that proves that I'm pretty good at it when I obviously am?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Like people are saying like degrees are worthless now, aren't they? Like, but like when generations ago, it was like if you had a degree, you would be guaranteed a job. Yeah. But like now, it's like definitely not.
You can be overqualified.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. No. Yeah. Definitely.
And then people don't want to hire you because they'll look at your qualification and think, oh, if anything better comes along. Yeah, you know, you're gonna leave at the first. Yeah, exactly. Which fair enough, you would.
And also, if
you put in all this time and money to get this degree, you would move ship to get a higher paying job. Yeah,
and you're like not gonna feel any sense of like obligation to your employer. Because if you say getting a job, if you get like an apprenticeship with somebody and work your way up that way, then your employer has like done you such a service. You're almost gonna naturally feel like you're always gonna want to be decent to that person, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? Like you're gonna have like a sense of loyalty. Yeah, and also I think there's also that thing of like there's no real world application. Like if you say if you start something say out of school and you build yourself up, then that's real world in the nitty gritty. Whereas you can have all these qualifications, but sometimes it's like if you've never actually done it.
Yeah, experience
it's almost like how much
is it worth?
Yeah,
I think there's definitely now a lot more ways to make it and not have to go to uni or go to college.
Yeah, I think that's a lot better. I think it just seems like ridiculous in a way, doesn't it? Anyway, we're going to listen to a track now. This is Eternal Life by Jeff Buckley. Check it out! That was Eternal Life by Jeff Buckley. You're listening to Pandora's Box on Aspen Waite Radio. I've been your host as usual this time of the week. Obadiah Penny Whistle is my name. Today with me has been Mr. Nathaniel Warren, otherwise known as Koi.
Koi.
Related to the koi carp, are you?
Yeah,
or are you just a bit shy?
Yeah, no, I quite like fish.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Fair play. Also, Mr. Drew Armstrong. Today he has been thrill. But he's also a bit hungover.
Yeah.
Because of his gig last night. He had bit too much of an exciting Monday night. Yeah, but that's cool, you know. You don't expect to get that excited on a Monday night, do you?
Yeah, got to be done.
I said, everyone go check out Death by Kai on Instagram. You can have a look on the stories. Everyone partying last night.
Oh, Wall of Death. It was pretty
crazy.
Wall
of Death on a Monday night. Who would have thunk it? So yeah, we're almost to the end of the show now. We've had a nice time talking about everything from aliens, science, life on Mars, a little bit touched on racism, the war, the Blitz, all sorts of cool stuff.
Been an interesting one, hasn't it? It's flowed into many different areas.
I think that's the fun of, not pigeonholing yourself into like a certain subject. I was going to talk a little bit about some cool settlements that have been found off the coast of like different countries.
All right. Okay.
But we can talk about it next week. I know that in like Norwich, in Norfolk. Sorry. Yeah, I don't think I got the right way around. Or was it Norfolk and Norwich, rather? A little settlement that was found just off the coast there. It's really cool. They're calling it the Wooden Stonehenge or something like that, and some other cool sites. But we'll talk about it next week. We have sadly come to the end of another session here on Pandora's Box. You've been listening to Aspen Waite Radio. I've been your host, as usual, Mr. Obadiah Penny Whistle. Thanks for joining me today, Mr. Coy.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thanks to you for joining me as well, Mr. Thrill. He's a thriller.
Oh, yeah. It's been good, man.
Yeah, check out Dark Dale, Forrester Glebe, and the Rap Radar on Aspen Waite Radio, our other shows. And join us next week for more shenanigans on Pandora's Box.
Next week.
Cheers, guys. This is Willow the Wisp by Opeth.